United States has maintained a presence in Nicaragua for a long time in order to safeguard its strategic and economic interests in the area. The United States deployed substantial military forces to Nicaragua in 1912 in an effort to quell the revolution. With the Nicaraguan government's approval, a legation guard of U.S. Marines was stationed in Managua from that point until 1925 in order to safeguard U.S. citizens' lives and property. The formal occupation began in 1912. Despite the fact that the United States launched numerous military attacks in Nicaragua during this time. The United States has repeatedly invaded Nicaragua in an effort to prevent any country other than itself from constructing a canal through the country. The Bryan-Chamorro Treaty of 1916 granted Nicaragua quasi-protectorate status.
This is the Sundeep Show.
The United States' involvement in Nicaragua lasted decades. The official occupation lasted from 1912 until 1933. In addition, beginning in 1982, the United States provided financial support to insurgents operating out of Honduras, known as the Contras. The United States has been involved in Nicaragua for more than 70 years. The Reagan administration heavily backed the anti-Sandinista rebel group, the Contras, in an effort to destabilize Nicaragua's socialist Sandinista government. The Contras were accused of committing a variety of violations of human rights, including homicides, acts of torture, and other horrendous transgressions. The United States was accused of being complicit in the atrocities committed by the Contras since it supported them while knowing of the abuses. As part of its campaign to exert pressure on the Sandinista government, the United States government provided clandestine assistance to an operation that involved the mining of Nicaragua's harbors. This assault, which attempted to impede Nicaragua's maritime trade, was viewed as an act of aggression and was widely condemned internationally. The Iran-Contra affair was a scandal in which the US government sold weapons to Iran in secret and used the money to pay the Contras in Nicaragua, even though Congress had banned this kind of aid. This clandestine operation was conducted in defiance of both the United States law and the oversight responsibilities of Congress. It gave rise to claims that the United States had funded a rebel organization that had violated human rights in Nicaragua. In the 1980s, when the US backed the anti-Sandinista Contras, it made a civil war in Nicaragua last longer, which cost a lot of lives and money. Violence, property devastation, and economic problems plagued the country for quite some time. The economy of Nicaragua was negatively impacted by numerous US policies and actions, including sanctions and support for opposition organizations. Economic downturns, limited foreign aid, and trade disruptions plagued the country. The Contras, who were backed by the United States, faced allegations of a multitude of human rights violations such as executions, torture, and abduction. This had a terrible effect on the people of Nicaragua and fueled a growing sense of uncertainty and panic. Nicaragua's internal divisions got worse when the US got involved. By funding the Contras and other opposition groups, the government became even more divided, making political stability impossible to obtain. The meddling of the United States left Nicaragua with a legacy of mistrust and suspicion.
You're listening to the Sundeep Show.
A considerable number of Nicaraguans harbored a negative perception of the United States, which has had an impact on the subsequent trajectory of the country's foreign policy and diplomatic ties. The mining of Nicaraguan harbors and the destruction wrought by the Contra War damaged the country's essential infrastructure, impeding its post-conflict recovery. The economic policies of Nicaragua were significantly impacted, and the nation became reliant on American corporations as a result of US economic interests in the country, specifically in the mining and plantain sectors. Because of this dependence, the government's capacity to formulate independent economic policy was severely constrained. In 1986, on June 27th, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, rendered a decision in the case of Nicaragua versus United States, which concerned the dispute between the United States and Nicaragua. The International Court of Justice ruled that the United States had violated international law by assisting the Contras in the rebellion against the Sandinistas and mining Nicaragua's harbors. The court concluded that the United States had violated several obligations of customary international law and the Treaty of Friendship, Commerce, and Navigation between the parties signed at Managua on the 21st of January 1956. These obligations included refraining from using force against another state, interfering in its affairs, violating its sovereignty, and interrupting peaceful maritime commerce. U.S. assistance for the Contras and military operations on Nicaragua were both deemed illegal by the International Court of Justice. The United States was also compelled to pay reparations by the court. The United States, however, declined to take part in the proceedings, claiming that the International Court of Justice lacked authority to hear the case. The U.S. also stopped the UN Security Council from carrying out the ruling, which meant that Nicaragua could not get any compensation. At present, the United States government is engaged in efforts to promote its interests in Nicaragua by facilitating a return to democratic governance and enhancing the security and prosperity of the Nicaraguan people. The U.S., on the other hand, has voiced worry over the acts of Nicaragua's current leaders, President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo, who have been accused of weakening the democratic structures of Nicaragua. In light of these concerns, the United States has sanctioned 47 Nicaraguans and 11 organizations, including the Vice President, the children of the first couple, close advisors to the President, and the heads of the Nicaraguan National Police, the National Assembly, the Judiciary, and the ruling Sandinista Party. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sundeep August. This is the Sundeep August Show. Despite these political issues, the US remains Nicaragua's most important economic partner. As of last year, bilateral commerce in goods between the two countries amounted to a total of $9.2 billion.
This is the Sundeep August Show.